Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Novia Pagone. I'm the director of the Center for Community Media and an associate professor of Spanish language and literatures here at GSU. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate the center's anniversary and our second annual fall conversation on equity and inclusion in the media. This year, we're talking about radio, unsurprisingly, and we have a stellar lineup of guests. Before I introduce them and to kick off our conversation, it is my pleasure to introduce the acting president of Governor State University, Dr. Corey S. Bradford Sr. And I'm going to say a few words about him before I bring him up here. So, with a wealth of experience spanning 3 decades, Dr. Bradford has consistently demonstrated his expertise and passion for educating disadvantaged students. Dr. Bradford is armed with a robust educational background in mathematics, business, statistics, and educational leadership. He holds multiple degrees and a certificate from esteemed institutions, including Southern Illinois University Carbondale and Harvard University, which have served as the foundation for his impactful career. His journey in higher education has seen him navigate various senior leadership roles in Illinois, Texas, and Missouri. Throughout his career, Dr. Bradford has been instrumental in shaping administrative policies, enhancing institutional wealth, and leading strategic planning initiatives. His visionary leadership has led to the implementation of innovative programs that promote student success and institutional growth. Dr. Bradford's contributions extend beyond innovative programs that promote student success and institutional growth. Dr. Bradford's contributions extend beyond his administrative duties. He is a staunch advocate for diversity and inclusion in higher education, championing initiatives for equity and access for all. His commitment to student mentorship and development is exemplified through his active engagement in teaching freshman courses, speaking to student groups, and mentoring other young professionals. In addition to his professional achievements, Dr. Bradford is a thought leader in the field of financial literacy and is often sought after for his insight on personal finance and building institutional wealth. He has been married for 30 plus years to his wife, Dr. Josette Bradford, and they have 2 adult children who are attending professional schools in law and veterinary medicine. Please welcome Dr. Corey Bradford.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled to be here today with you to celebrate the launch of a new student-run radio station. That's outstanding, isn't it? The addition of this really ties into our strategic plan for the university, as we want our students to have hands-on learning experience. The radio station will give our students that platform to amplify their diverse voices and perspective within our community. This aligns with our efforts to promote equity and a sense of belonging for all of our students. Of course, the station will host a lot of great speakers. They will have panel discussions about social issues, political issues, and economic issues, I hope. Today also marks the second year anniversary of the Center for Community Media. And I want to thank Dr. Patron and her team of faculty who launched this initiative. Because just in 2 short years, they have dedicated resources to strengthening our GSU TV station, as well as the Phoenix News student newspaper. I think it's an online paper, right? We don't do paper anymore, right? I guess I'm still old school. I still read an old paper, you know. Everybody else get their news electronically. So naturally, we want to continue to empower our students to gain these practical skills in both media production and broadcasting. And so today, I think we have a great lineup of guest speakers who will be on the panel today, and we want to welcome you to GSU. At GSU, we have a saying, a new slogan now. When I say we are, you say Gov State. Okay? Y'all gonna follow me? We are We are? We are? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bradford, for being here, for energizing us, and for your support and leadership. I also still read the old school newspaper every Sunday. Uh, so 1 year ago, we were in this same room to launch the center. Since then, we've been quite busy. We established First Voice, a student storytelling competition, planned again for late March 2024, so get all your stories ready. Our student-run television program, GSU TV, now reaches over 1 million households on CAN TV every second Friday of the month at 7 p.m. and streaming on Roku. The Phoenix newspaper, or digital news, has revamped their website, thanks to one of our student graphic designers, and publishes new stories every week on our campus and community. Our faculty fellows are working on research-based productions related to stroke awareness and prevention, gender and sexuality studies, and access to higher education for system-impacted people. 2 of our steering committee members completed the first episode of their show, Ink About It, which debuts on December 7th. And earlier today, we, as Dr. Bradford mentioned, we launched Radio Jaguar, our new student-run internet streaming radio station. We're very proud of all of these accomplishments. These programs and the other work we do at the center demonstrate how community media brings us together and serves the digital information needs of the GSU campus and greater Southland communities. None of this would be possible if we didn't work collaboratively as a team toward our common goals under the center's mission, which aims to support democratic engagement, increase civic awareness, and amplify the diverse voices of our Southland communities. As we move into the center's next phase, we ask you to join us in supporting our students by giving to the center. Even a small amount will benefit our student programs, and you'll find postcards here with a QR code, or there's a link on our website. But we really appreciate all the support, whether it's financial or spiritual or physical being here. So as you can imagine, running the center requires a mighty team. So I'd like to thank a few people before I introduce our panelists. I would like to thank Dr. Cheryl Green, Dr. Corey Bradford, and Dr. Beverly Schneller for their enthusiastic support. To the center's advisory board members, thank you for giving your time and expertise in support of the center's mission. Thank you to the College of Arts and Sciences Dean Jason Zingsheim for his ongoing support and leadership. The center would not exist without the vision and efforts of Dr. Deborah James, who is now the chair of the Division of Arts and Letters. Yes. She is the founder and former director of the CCM. A huge thank you to the members of the CCM steering committee and the program committee who define what it means to be student-centered. I also wish to thank the GSU Foundation for its support, and Will Davis in particular, the Foundation's CEO and Vice President of Institutional Advancement, Marketing, and Communications. Finally, a very special and heartfelt thanks to John Z. Macaulay Davis. Yes. Lara Rasay. Lynn Johnson Borisma. Josh Young, Uriah Berryhill, Heather Penn, and the entire DLMD team for ensuring that today is the best it can be. And last but absolutely not least, our very talented students. We're proud to present a program that represents the kind of dialogue that the CCM aims to facilitate on our campus and in our communities. So let's get on with the show. Enough of me. It is my honor to introduce our guests and moderator, and I'm going to ask them to come on up to a seat as I say their wonderful accomplishments. So starting with Ayana Contreras. Ayana Contreras is a cultural historian, memory worker, radio DJ, and archivist, an avid collector with over 8,000 vintage vinyl records. She, she hosts the Reclaim Soul program on WBEZ and Vocalo Radio in Chicago. Uh, she is also a columnist for Downbeat Magazine, and her writings have been published in the New York Times, Chicago Review, Oxford American, and Bandcamp Daily, among other publications. Her book on post-civil rights era cultural history, titled Energy Never Dies, Afro-Optimism and Creativity in Chicago, was published December 2021 through University of Illinois Press. Welcome, Ayana. And yes. A few lucky winners will receive a copy of her book at the end of our program today. Anna DeShawn, pronouns anything respectful, is a multi-award and Ambie Award-winning podcast producer and host. She is also a Chicago-born social entrepreneur who builds streaming platforms which center and celebrate Black and Indigenous people of color and queer and trans people of color creatives. Media has always been her passion, and in 2009, she turned that passion into a reality when she founded E3 Radio, an online radio station playing queer music and reporting on queer news with an intersectional lens. She expanded her media reach when she co-founded The Cube. I think you have some information at your tables about it, a podcast production company and curated platform to discover the best music and podcasts by BIPOC and QTPOC creatives. Most recently, Anna was announced as part of the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame 2023 induction cohort. Congratulations. Anna is determined to ride media into its next era by utilizing digital media streams to tell the stories and play the music that deserves to be heard. Yes. Sasha Ann Simons is an award-winning journalist and the host of WBEZ's Reset. We have some fans here. She comes to Chicago from Washington's NPR station, WAMU, where she was a program host, regularly behind the mic on newscasts and talk shows. Sasha Ann was also a national reporter focused on issues of race, identity, and economic mobility. Her accolades include an Edward R. Murrow Award and a Radio Feature Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. Two Edward R. Murrow Awards, excuse me. In 2022, she received a Peter Lysigor Award for Health and Science Reporting from the Chicago Headline Club. Sasha Ann has a bachelor's degree in journalism from Toronto Metropolitan University and studied film and television production at American University. Welcome. And our moderator tonight is Dr. Sharice Joy Stone Thompson, who goes by the moniker Joy Storm. She's a multi-talented singer-songwriter, actress, activist, and educator. In addition to her passion for music, Dr. Stone Thompson teaches college composition and literature classes. She is a 3-time graduate of Governor State University, all right, with a Master of Arts in English, an MBA, and a doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership. In July 2022, she released her debut album, A Tempest, A Piece of Joy. Dr. Sharice Joy Stone Thompson and her husband, author Lance D. Thompson Jr., also known as Poetic Justice, founded CMI Radio, an internet-based radio station. CMI Radio believes in giving all artists, particularly marginalized independent artists, a platform to be heard worldwide. So she's just sitting around doing nothing. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I have just a couple of housekeeping notes and then I will sit down and hand the stage over. There will be time for audience questions at the end. If you have a question at that time, please be sure to step up to the microphones. There's one on either side of the room here so that your question can be heard by everyone here and those joining us online. I also ask that you please silence or turn off your cell phone and other devices at this time. As I said earlier, this event is being live streamed and recorded. Thank you and enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much, Novia. All right. This sounds good. All right. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. So I'm just going to jump right in, okay? All right. So how did you get into radio? Tell us about your journey.
Haha. So officially about 2004, 2004, I went back to school attending Western Illinois University. and I was an English major, minored in broadcasting, and they have a student-run radio station. They actually have 3 stations on campus, but the student-run station had complete student. They ran it from top to bottom with a advisor, so there was lots of opportunity. I chose to go to Western Illinois University versus like Columbia or something like that, because what I realized is being in a smaller market, that was going to give me more hands-on opportunities. Super competitive. You might not ever be on air. So I wound up running that station by the time I graduated 2 years later. And from there went straight to WBEZ, had an internship, got hired, started Vocalo. I was one of the very first people hired and helped it when it was still called the Secret Radio Project. We built that station and I essentially never left. So that's been 17 years
Wow.
since I've been there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So for me, I started in undergrad. So I did my undergrad at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And we had a student-led radio station, and me and my homies got together and started a show. You know, most of the station was rock music, and we didn't listen to rock. So we was like, we should play something that we want to listen to. So we started playing like 90s, because we were big 90s fans, and like some of our favorite hip hop and R&B. Then I ended up with an internship at the local radio station in the city of Des Moines. Okay. So what was ironic about that was that he actually had Tom Joyner on the station in the morning, which I don't even know how he did that. But either way, I got a job there. And so I was turning on Tom Joyner in the morning and then doing the weather and the traffic in between, and like taking his drops and all of that good stuff. And then I realized that no one had to necessarily see me, which my appearance for television wasn't going to work. Okay. Like there's not masculine of center women on television, especially doing sports, what I wanted to do. And people would call the station and be like, oh, we really love your voice. Oh, you're great. And I was like, well, this might work. This might be the lane of success. And so after that, I was hooked on radio. And I just really fell in love with the medium.
So my journey into radio came later. I started with the T word, television. So my journey through school and through my journalism degree was internships every semester, working at local TV stations, I was doing a little bit of communications too. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at the end. But I was one of those stereotypical people going through getting their bachelor's degree saying, I want to be on TV. I want to be on TV. But I was also passionate about news. And so I knew I wanted to sort of put the two together. I was able to make that happen. My first job right out of school actually began in my last semester of my bachelor's degree. I landed a job full-time telling the news at 6. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And it was just outside of Toronto, which is where I went to school, just like east of Toronto, but only like 40 minutes away. So I didn't have to do the huge move to the big city, you know, to make it. But that was kind of my journey into broadcast. And then fast forward, when I decided to take my career from Canada to the US, my first job south of the border was in Rochester, New York. And it was happened to be at a PBS and NPR station, WXXI. And that was my foot into radio, just accidentally. I actually got a job on the PBS side of things. But as I was telling one of your peers earlier, I just ended up having to turn a lot of my video packages into radio pieces for the radio station, right? If I go cover something, I was kind of the only reporter at the station covering the thing. So I would just sort of make it multi-purpose and do a little cut a spot for the radio, et cetera. And then that turned into me like sliding into the radio station and getting a full-time job as a GA reporter and doing and scaling down my television appearances. I started to host like a weekly show. And so radio went up, TV went down, and then I never left. I just kind of kept moving to different radio stations from there. I went to DC, and then now I'm here in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And that was it.
Yeah, that was it. Right.
Easy.
Super easy.
Yes, super easy. So along that same line, so what advice do you have for students that are interested in radio, or even independent artists that want to get their music played on the radio? Like what advice do you have?
So Vocalo accepts submissions, vocalo.org/local music is where you do that. And we play if it's good, we'll play it, period. It's not about payola. It's not about who you are. It's not about how many fouls you have. That's not important to us. In terms of the radio thing, I always tell folks that the number one thing is, number one, bet on yourself, because nobody else ever has to. Meaning, put the work in behind the scenes so that when an opportunity presents itself, be ready, but also be flexible. Because if you notice, all of these stories, we didn't come in and they handed us a show or made us a star or did recognized our inherent fabulousness. It was
They should have.
no. It was, I can flick the switch to the satellite and I can run this radio station, though I've never done it because the person ahead of me quit school suddenly. It's just being ready to do whatever it takes to make those moves in the field if you're really passionate about it, and maybe the right thing will happen.
So we're always looking for music. So go to e3radio.fm and you can email us your music all the time. Same thing, it just needs to be good. And I'll be honest, I'm not the one listening to it, okay? So you can just send as much as you want. The advice I would give is just be very clear on maybe where you want to go. So I was clear. So I spent 4 years in Des Moines, Iowa, okay? And then I spent 2 years in Ithaca, New York. After 6 years in small towns, I was ready to come home. Home is the south side of Chicago, okay? I was ready to come home. And I recognized that if I really wanted to, I don't know, maybe one day make it to Good Morning America, okay? I would have to start in a small market. Oftentimes, you have to start in a small market, work your way up. Chicago's the number 3 market in the country. So I'm not coming to Chicago and making it big anywhere, right? Or maybe even doing any work that I want to do. And so I was clear that I'm going home, so I'm gonna have to figure out another path for myself to do what I want to do, and to tell the stories that I want to tell. So I think it's important for you to be clear on what you actually want out of this. There's lots of opportunities, there's lots of things you can do, but I decided to go the independent route because the stories I wanted to tell were about Black and brown queer folks. And there is no station doing that. And so I decided to start one. So that was my path. It is not an easy one, but it's a fun one, okay? And it was a passion project. I started it in 2009. And so it was a passion project all while I had a corporate career in streaming and media. So my corporate career was still in broadcasting. It was just strictly online and in the corporate space. So it was still feeding, all my education was still feeding into this thing while I was doing my passion project on the side. But if you want to be out here and be on Good Morning America or the next, WGN person, then plan your path accordingly, okay? And get ready to be in small markets and get your feet wet and get all the learnings and build all the networks needed to actually be successful to get you where you want to go, right? Because your network is absolutely your net worth, okay? So it is all about relationships.
Just real quick, I just want to add one thing. The media landscape is constantly shifting and evolving, and the job that maybe you're best suited for might not even be a thing yet. So also keep your mind open to spaces where you could uniquely fit in, and your story could really get you far too. That's also an important point, because what I'm doing, my job didn't exist when I was in school at all. I crafted every job I've ever had. I helped them write the job description.
I'm going to piggyback right off of that because the job I talked about a second ago in Rochester, New York, at the NPR PBS was very similar. That job in the radio newsroom didn't actually exist. I created it because I started there on a grant that was, I think, a 2-year grant on the PBS side, and I finished all my deliverables, all the stories I was supposed to write and package, because I was shooting, editing, writing. I forgot to mention that I was a one-man band. I was doing everything, carrying around a massive camera where, every establishment I'd show up at to do interviews, they're like, "Oh my gosh, can we help you?" And running to open the doors because I just looked ridiculous walking in with this big camera and tripod that was heavier than that. So I created the job that was in the newsroom because I was like, okay, well, I'm finished this. I don't want to leave. Don't necessarily want to go back to Canada right now. I'm kind of having fun here in the US. This was prior to, certain people in office and the White House. Still fun. But point being, I created that job and sort of talked to upper folks and convince them that I would be an asset in that role. And here are the things that you can get out of it, sort of negotiated right off the bat. But yeah, I'm just going to follow along and say you really will have to work hard for everything that you get. I interned in every semester while I was in school. I made relationships with people at those stations. I was not afraid to talk to the news director. I ended up with that full-time position right out of school where they were chasing me because I was the intern 2 years prior who spoke up and was like, hey, I want to start writing some copy for the anchor. Like, I mean, you don't ever have to use it, but do you mind if I start like writing, little 30-second intros and things like that? And he was like, okay, sure. And I just started bugging him. Every time I would write my own version of how I would intro that reporter's package. And I was just feeding them to him like, here you go. Sometimes my intro was actually better than what the staff would write. And it would actually be what the anchor would end up reading. And he just liked my tenacity. The fact that I was able to just walk up to him like, hey, you don't know me from a can of paint. I'm XYZ student at XYZ school, but here's what I think I can do. And I would love more practice at this thing. And I think he just liked that attitude and he wanted to see me win. And that has followed me throughout my career. I've been lined up with people who just wanted to see me win because they saw the drive and they just saw how enthused I was. One thing I will say as far as advice as well is, because this is something that works my nerve, every time I talk to students or every time I work with students who intern at the stations that I'm at, y'all never follow up. If I give you my number and I say, or my email and I say, reach out, I'm willing to help. I can connect you to so-and-so. I hardly get, I think if I was to like calculate the ratio of how many people actually follow up, it drives me insane. And I'm like, what do you think is going to happen? You think someone's going to find you in your living room and pluck you out and take you, pull you into a newsroom? It's not going to happen. And someone's in the industry trying to help you. And so usually that drives me insane. So it's like, don't ask for my contact information. Don't reach out if you're not going to actually like follow up and, see it through. So yeah, that would be my biggest advice is like, be serious about it. And if
Yes.
you're going to make those contacts, like stick with them because
Yes.
we're trying to see everybody win.
Absolutely.
S. Simons at WBEZ.org.
Yes. Make sure you note that.
SSIMONS at WBEZ.org.
Very good. Y'all got that? All right. So on the same line, I heard you guys mention something. You mentioned something about politics or someone that was in office. So how do you deal with hot topics when things come up on your, in the news, or how do you deal with that with your audience?
How do I deal with hot topics?
Hot topics, just political things that,
Oh, I'm dealing with a hot topic right now.
Okay.
Charisse. I don't even know what I can say about this hot topic because it's current. Like
is real current.
like real talk. The entire drive here to Governor State University was me ranting about said hot topic
Okay.
and how it's being dealt with in the newsroom. Whew.
Let me give you time to think about that because I know what it's like. You don't want to be on the
Woo,
spot and say something
child.
crazy and then it gets back to the establishment.
So I'm referring to the conflict overseas and just how it's being covered. But yeah, go ahead.
So like what I'll say is actually two separate answers. Now, let's say you work at a music-based commercial station. They give you a little more freedom to say ridiculous things or more controversial things. We both work for an NPR station. So I work for the NPR music station side and she works for the NPR news side because we are built around the tenet of being objective and unbiased. Human beings are not unbiased creatures, but that's another conversation. We're supposed to appear that way. We have to be exceptionally cautious about not putting our opinion of actively political events in the broadcast space. Now, do we allow other people to express their views? And do we try and challenge them and offer other perspectives? Absolutely. But am I going to tell you how I feel about this thing going on in the Iowa caucus thing? Like, probably not.
And this is why I'm independent.
Yes,
'Cause I can just say whatever I want. Now, my road is different though, okay? my bills is not on auto pay no more. Okay. I have everything I eat, I hate this analogy, but whatever I eat, I kill. You kill whatever you eat. Like, I'm out here doing everything, right? As an independent media owner. But at the same time, I can say what I want. Now, I started this podcast called Queer News. Y'all should check it out. I drop it every Monday. I do 3 or 4 queer news stories. 3 or 4 queer news stories that I feel like are not being covered in the mainstream media. Now, with these stories, though, I do my best not to bleed. Like, what leads does not always have to be bleeding, right? Because that's what happens. And then the news cycle moves on to the next day, right? And this is what we're accustomed to. So I really try my best to find a balanced approach to the news stories that I'm sharing with our listeners, because they want to hear the good that's happening in the LGBTQ community, as well as the tragic things, because we need to amplify those things. But I try my best to be as balanced and provide other stories, and not just the sad ones. And recently I had to do sad ones because it was necessary. So on Monday, I had to lead with the story around the 3 Black trans women who have been murdered over the last 2 weeks in the country. Now, I would imagine most of you have no idea that that has happened. That is not something that's making the news.
I only knew about one.
Right.
Oh, I
Okay.
didn't
Yeah.
know.
There's been 3. And so I had to lead with that. Now, what else I hate is that I don't hate TikTok. I love TikTok. Go find me there. But what I hate is the algorithms, right?
Yes.
And so the algorithm picked up that story, and now that thing has gone viral. Now, I can do a story about something good and I get 200 views, okay? Now, this video has gotten 50,000 views. Now, it's important that people know, but the algorithm is feeding into this negative storytelling around this is what's happening. But there's so much more. So I try my best to sort of be as balanced as possible while still recognizing when it's important to just say what it is, right?
And while I do work for, I have the opposite experience where I'm not independent, and I do have several people above me that need to check certain boxes at certain times. But I mean, my show still has, well, we try to at least keep sort of a rim of, editorial independence away from like the corporate and entities at the station. We're like, we're the journalists, and the news still kind of resides with us, and so it's that balance that my colleagues are talking about here. And it's like with the current conflict, what I was alluding to earlier is that objectivity, and folks are having difficulty in the building sort of keeping their personal biases out of what is going on. There are people personally impacted by the war that's happening overseas on both sides. And so me as the daily talk show, who's really the only one covering this in our building. I mean, if you go online right now, I think there's like 15 segments on wbez.org, 13 of them are mine. So I'm not kidding when I say I'm like the only one that's covering it. And so what comes with that is the praise when people call and they're like, yeah, oh my God, thank you so much. I feel seen. I'm a Palestinian woman, American woman. I live in Schaumburg, and I can't believe you did this story. Thank you so much. Or, I go to this, synagogue, and thank you so much for telling this side of the story. But then the blowback also comes to me as well. So when people are upset with, a guest I have on that is saying something that is true, because I'm not going to let you spew like incorrect, inaccurate information, right? I'm actively fact checking. So are my producers. I mean, if you say a number that's wrong, I'm jumping in and I'm like, oh, it's actually 1,200, but yes, go on, so and so. And so I'm going to let you say your piece. And so what they're hearing is truth, but people are so caught up in it that they're just, they get angry at what they're hearing, because this is a very tense situation. And so we'll get the voicemails, we'll get the emails, and so it goes either way. And so I'm tasked with sort of tuning some of that out and just kind of focusing on the journalism, right? You have to just focus on like, is this the truth? Is this factual information? Is this stuff that people need? Is this information that people need to know? As long as I'm not misrepresenting what's actually happening, I'm fine with putting it on the air. And I've talked to bosses about it. I've kept my stance when it comes to this. I think I feel like there are some people, who are above me that would rather I just stay away from the topic and just like stop covering it. I refuse to do that. And so so in sort of I'm pulling from Anna's bag where I'm going to say it anyway, or I'm going to have the conversations anyway. So we'll have to find some sort of happy medium so that we can still get this stuff out. And so now, I'm kind of, the happy medium is like, okay, I have to like tape the conversations now and then I get it on the air.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, no more live Israel Hamas. Okay, fine, whatever. But I'm not taking anything out. So if that pleases you, great. But like, so it's like, but at least you're letting me still do the interviews and still put out conversations on controversial topics. So it's a dance you got to do. And depending on where you work, you got to keep everybody happy.
Yes, yes. So you guys already have mentioned a couple of ways, but can you explain the ways for those of us that don't know?
Trying to give them the real, Sheree.
Yes, yes. The ways that community radio is different from commercial radio and even independent radio. Explain some of the ways that it's different.
Well, I would say in this particular instance, it's less about community radio and more about a journalistic organization, right? As opposed to an entertainment organization. And what sort of information is disseminated on the two different platforms.
Like we're having internal disagreements about news, about real news and real
That's
lives.
different.
What's
I
happening to actual
think,
people.
like shock jocks are not on NPR, and there's a reason for that. Like that's not the vibe. I would say in terms of non-commercial radio, our FCC license dictates that we are supposed to center conversations and content that helps to build community. So that could be through music, context, stories, allowing platforms for people within the community, allotting certain amount of time for PSAs and all that other stuff. We're doing that a lot more than other stations. Other stations, maybe they run, I don't know, 2 or 3 PSAs at night on Sunday, or they'll stop the music once a month, maybe have a little conversation or something like that, but it's very minimal what they're required to do. The other thing is if you're at a NPR affiliated station in particular, you're getting money, a certain amount of money from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and other such entities and sometimes foundations. And a lot of that money, I don't want to say it has strings attached, but they're also asking for a certain amount of community related content.
And I'll also say this is a great resource. It's the Chicago Independent Media Alliance. It's called SEMA, and we are a part of that. It was born out of the Chicago Reader. There's about 60 outlets represented. And what I find with those groups of outlets, there's so many that I have never heard of before, but then they are specific to their neighborhoods, right? We know Chicago. Chicago's a very beautifully diverse place, but also a beautifully segregated place, okay? And so you've got things happening in Portage Park that's not happening in Hyde Park, that's not happening in Lakeview, right? And so these community-based local media orgs are focused on these blocks of areas. Like I'm focused on this area. There's a paper, I think that's only in Polish, right? And they're focused on this particular area. And so I think that's also really beautiful about what community or local media can be. It can be specific to this group of people that I'm really passionate about. And I want to tell these stories, and I'm going to do follow-ups, and I can do more follow-ups, and I can go to the local games, like community media like that is another option, another path, if that seems like that speaks to what the work you want to do.
Yeah, I echo everything that said. It's representation at the end of the day. Yeah.
So in the age of streaming music, how is radio keeping up with the times? Like what things is radio doing? What are some of the initiatives? What's happening in radio to keep up with streaming music?
So obviously, we are broadcasting. We have multiple frequencies, but we also are obviously also streaming, right? Like we have the app. You can reach us wherever you're at. I like to think that our competition is not other radio stations. So just a little bit about Vocalo. Vocalo, we consider ourselves an urban alternative format, which I helped found. Urban alternative, there's multiple stations throughout the country that are based on Vocalo's format. So urban alternative, essentially like a shorthand of it is, it's like, imagine a station that plays like SZA in heavy rotation and has been doing so for like 10 years.
Nice.
You feel what I'm saying? Like you get
Yes.
immediately, you know what it is. It's kind of like how people are streaming music anyway. A lot of people are listening to this, but it's not what urban radio generally centers in their playlists. So one thing I'm really clear about is listening to the way that people are listening to music. And wherever I'm at, I am paying very close attention to how people are listening to music. Because I am the program director of Vocalo, what I'm always trying to do is make a very consistent product. And that sounds really dry, but literally every host, the playlist outside of our DJ specialty mixes, every playlist that you hear throughout the day, everything you're hearing, I have built that playlist by hand and decided these songs sound great together. This is going to be the vibe. This feels really good together. This music is helping to take you on a journey, because that is not what an algorithm is going to give you. You feel what I'm saying? So like, it's super important for me, for somebody to tell me, oh, I recommended this to a friend, or, you know, I was listening when this thing happened, or what have you. Like, that's important. And when it becomes a thing for us to gather around and, oh yeah, I was listening to that interview too. I was listening to when Malik Yusuf was talking about Kanye West's mom passing away. That's true. Literally, I was in the car listening to one of our hosts talking to Malik Yusuf, who's a, you know, an artist, and was really got emotional. And they had to go to like break. And that was like a moment. And literally I was at another place and the person was talking about they had been listening to Vocalo and they heard the same thing in the same moment, which again is not the streaming experience. The streaming experience is very, I don't want to say isolating, but it's individual. I think there's a place under the sun for both. But what we can do that others cannot do is a live listening experience, which again, you're giving a live listening experience when you're streaming in the way that you're doing. So like streaming versus the algorithm is actually two different things.
I think that's the answer. I don't work in the music space, but I think it's a similar idea, right? With the streaming, we're now streaming online on WBEZ.org, and just, I mean, that's the way my mom is able to check out my show every day, and she lives in Toronto.
Mhm.
That's, you know, that's the way of the future.
Yes.
And I'll also say what we're going to start doing is actually playing podcasts on our radio station too, to extend the reach of our podcast episodes to the radio. So we're going to start incorporating that. And I know I've seen that across the board as well. Radio is tough business. People tuning in live at a certain time, at a certain day, that is not the behaviors that are consistent today as they were 20 years ago. So, you know, I think the advent of podcasting is helping with that, because people want to be on demand. They want to listen whenever they can listen. You know, my mom's generation, Time Joyner was on at 5 a.m. The alarm came on and then time was on. And she was not going to miss a minute of it, no matter what she was doing, right? That's just not how we function today. So I think radio is finding its way on how it can incorporate that and still be present with people when it comes to streaming.
Yeah, we've increased the number of podcasts that we release every day to meet that need, right? To reach more people. We've lengthened some types of episodes. Like we've really like sort of zoomed in on the data and seen what people are gravitating toward. Which day of the week are they coming most? And oh, it's my Friday episode that they're particularly drawn to. Okay, well, we're going to give you something. And so we've beefed that up and made it, you know, extra special, new music, all that stuff, just to make it like a really great listening experience. We're just following the bouncing ball of where people are and where they want to listen.
What I'll add real quick is well, it's interesting because, you know, we're a radio station by our identity, but we think of ourselves, Vocalo, as a multidisciplinary, multi-platform, like lifestyle brand. That's what we think of ourselves as, because, you know, there will be people who only access us on our website, others who really just rock with us on Instagram, you know what I'm saying? Others that really only, you know, subscribe to our Spotify. And all of those ways, you have a full, rich experience with our brand. That's very important. Not just duplicating it, but really like optimizing it for where you are. That's super important. And I'm going to tell you, broadcast, I know people want to poo-poo on broadcast, but what I'm going to say to you is there's a reason why Lyrical Lemonade reaches out to us, because they don't have a broadcast in Chicago, okay? I mean, and it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. It actually matters. It matters. And it matters when we were the first station in Chicago to play Chance the Rapper. No Name was my intern. You know what I'm saying? I've known Saba since he was 16. I know these kids. They're not kids anymore, but I know these people, and we help come up together, and we offered that because it wasn't about payola and what Def Jam's talking about. And although Def Jam does call us as well when they're trying to build an artist, I think the role of smaller stations, independent stations, NPR music type stations in helping to build the ecosystem of the music and arts and culture in their local community is also valuable.
Talk a little bit more about that, like Chicago's role in the musical history, radio history. It's played such a pivotal role. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So Chicago, now it's the third largest market, which is nothing to sneeze at, but for a very long time, it was number 2, right? It's where what LA is now. So in terms of record labels, they would always test market stuff here, especially Black radio. WVON was known as the station that Motown would send their singles to first, because if it played at WVON, it could play anywhere. You know, does it play in Peoria? That old saying? So that's also super important. And in general, there's just like a diversity of folks. And it's also really reflective in a way a lot of big cities aren't, of sort of a working class, you know what I'm saying, salt of the earth ethic of things. So like our audiences, they're not gonna deal with just some razzmatazz bull bleep. They want the real thing. They want to connect to the artist. They want to feel like they know these hosts. They want to feel like we could have a drink together, or a non-alcoholic beverage if you're underage, or choose to do so. That is a good choice. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that that's also something that's valuable. And me in general, I got into the market. I love radio, but why I got into doing an old school show, which is what my primary product is that I grew up listening to Herb Kent like a lot of people, but I also knew Herb Kent wasn't always going to be around, and I wanted to make sure that that thing continued. So I stayed in my school books, and look where we are. Look what God will do.
Exactly. So something else that's sort of changed over the last 20 years is social media, right? Social media is a part of our everyday lives. Can you talk to us about how you use social media, both personally and then as part of a marketing tool for the radio station?
I feel like I used to be so much more active on Twitter, well, X.
Right, what is that about?
What is that about? Yeah, so I think I'm less active on Twitter on my personal account. Let me be clear, just because of all the noise that was happening on X recently, as we all know. When a certain Mr. Musk took over. But my show has a Twitter, and our station has a Twitter, and our station has an Instagram, and our station has a TikTok. Our show now has a TikTok. We've basically made sure that we were sort of on all the social media platforms, Facebook as well. I'm leaving Facebook out, but we have a show Facebook, there's a station Facebook. It's part of the fabric of just our daily rotation on the talk show. I mean, it's built into everything that we do as we're pitching segments, as we're figuring out who the guests are going to be. Like, okay, this is the topic we want to talk about. What's the conversation? When listeners listen to this conversation, what are they going to be taking away from it? Okay, then who are the right voices for this conversation? Then we figure out guests, and then a producer goes running and tries to book these voices on the show, and then we start to figure out the social media presence, and we figure out the guest's social media presence and how that sort of links with ours. We will tweet, we tweet sort of before the conversation, during the conversation. We've scheduled tweets to go out, and Facebook posts
So
to go
many
out
tweets.
after. We just it's and literally it's such a huge part of the meeting that I'm almost laughing in my head right now at how ridiculous this sounds, but it's like, has anyone tweeted this? Like we literally are frantic, like if someone dropped the ball and forgot like about the social media, because it's like this idea like, oh my gosh, I'm on the radio right now and no one knows. You have to put out a tweet. And it sounds crazy, but it really does impact the listening experience and just drawing in those additional listeners. Again, not everybody's sitting by a radio tuned in to 91.5. So I got to find you where you are. And then, of course, when you tweet, you've got to share that. Speaking of streaming, you share the streaming link, and you share, if you're sharing a podcast episode, you share the link to Apple. And then you might want to share the Spotify too, just in case people don't have iPhones. You just have to be very thoughtful. We went to TikTok earlier this year because we're like, well, here's another way to reach people, and here's another way to get our guests involved in sort of helping us tell the story of what was just on air. And so we would, after the guests would get off the air with me, out of the studio with me, another producer would kind of meet them in the green room and sort of talk them through, like, okay, here's what we're going to TikTok. You're going to talk about this. And like, we'd almost have like a script ready for you because we need to put up a TikTok to promote what you just did on the radio. So it's a whole cycle, and it's built in now to what we do. And it's like clockwork. It's just hilarious to me actually saying it out loud, because this is just what we do every day.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say, as an independent person, it helps me to make the world really small. So a lot of people may not have heard of my station, right? They may not have heard of my podcast. And so and I don't have a PR agency, right? I don't have like this laundry list of contacts to agencies to say, hey, I want this guest. But a DM be open. Okay. And so
Ours are open too.
Okay.
You can slide
through the DMs. And when I first started, especially with Facebook, it made the world really small. I'm based in Chicago. I was able to reach people in New York and in LA and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. If you got 30 minutes, you mind doing a quick interview with me? And people would say yes. And I'd be so surprised. And the more yeses you get, the more people see you, the larger the platform grows, and the more trust you build with your listenership and your audience, right? And so for me, I know for a fact we would not have been able to build what we've been able to build without social media. And today, I mean, the landscape has changed so much. When I joined Facebook, you had to have like a .edu, okay? I think it was the first users on Facebook.
2000
Chile, yes. I'm glad I don't look it, okay? But that was the real deal. And so a few years ago, with TikTok, I was like, I went on YouTube University to figure out how in the world I was going to TikTok. I was like, I do not dance. You can ask my wife. I do not have any rhythm. Like, what am I supposed to be doing on TikTok? YouTube University saved me, taught me how to TikTok, taught me how to make a reel. And I was like, well, maybe this is a way for me to extend the reach of our platform, because we're not getting 50,000 listens, right? So when I talk to the iHearts of the world and the Wonderies of the world in the podcasting space, they want you to have 50,000, 100,000 downloads, right? That is not what I'm doing, not yet. And so how do I build the digital properties to build the reach I need to get the advertisers, right? So I'm not just selling radio ads or podcast ads, right? I'm selling, I'll do a TikTok. Okay, you buy a couple of ads, I'll do a TikTok and I'll do a reel. All right, so the listens and the reach is how I have been able to sustain my business. So, follow the TikTok, okay, because it helps my whole situation. But TikTok definitely helps to make the world small, Instagram, and to reach your audience. You have nothing without an audience. And so finding your people is so incredibly important. And social media has helped me to do that.
And I want to highlight something that you said real quick, which was that you joked about the DMs and getting you. You would be surprised how many people will say yes to an interview. Like, do not hesitate to reach out and try to get that person, even if you think, oh God, they'd never. Why would, this public official, or why would this person ever want to talk to me? A lot of times they will say yes. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I was afraid for a little while too. Like, oh, I can never reach out.
I have a story about that, actually.
Sliding in someone's DMs?
Not exactly. This is before DMs. That's not for this audience. So many years ago, when I first got hired at WBZ, I wanted to do something about Chess Records, right? Chess Records, the venerable label, that was based here in the Chicago area for many, many years. Right. And so Marshall Chess is the son of one of the founders of Chess. And I said, let me Google him and see if I can find his contact information. Now, back then, people's phone numbers would pop up in a Google search, and there'd be like a little phone emoji thing that would come up. And I said, well, let me call this number. I'm thinking it's his office. Marshall, honey, someone's on the phone for you. It's like his house. I'm sitting in the studio and this is like his house. And so, obviously I schedule it for a later day, but it was wild. He was like, yeah, I'll talk to you about this thing. But part of what made him say yes was he knew that this wasn't just some random crank. This was somebody who really was educated on sort of his history, his family history. I was ready to have this real conversation, and he was delighted to talk about this thing that he was very passionate about. So sometimes kind of doing that legwork and knowing what they really want to talk about is going to make it more likely that they'll do it. Don't necessarily focus on your angle, but focus on the angle of them, and you'd be surprised who you talk to. But in terms of social media, like with us, Instagram is our biggie. We do a lot of reels. We do a lot of Instagram content. We do a lot of video of interviews that we are doing actively, a lot of photo stuff. That's a big one. But I'll tell you something, and a lot of Twitter too, but like the big thing for us isn't so much how many times we tweet, but getting that engagement. Engagement is gold, okay? So like making sure that people see if they add us, we comment, we like, we share, we do all these other things. And like folks do that back. Like if we just feel like some black hole, presence, this robot, then there's like, what's the point for us?
Yeah, the engagement piece is big for us too. I love to respond. Actually, if you email us, I'm the one answering you. It's not some producer. And so usually the response is, "Oh wow, I didn't expect it to be you." And I answer quick too. I'm like, it's almost like when you have your cell phone next to you and someone texts you and you text back fast. Like I'll email back fast and they're like, "Wow," even if it's a complaint. I'm like,
Right.
you're ready to clap back, and the clap back comes in like 5 minutes, and they're like, "Oh," and then they're like, "Love your show."
My
Like-
favorite. Oh, I
Sure.
love that when they do the public,
Oh yeah.
and then
It's
you
always
gotta
love your
talk
show
to
after you
them,
just tried to
and
diss
then
me.
some random is clicking the heart emoji, like, oh, I love that, or the like, depending on where it is, and it's like, well, actually, sir, like, and then it's like you could tell like who's picking sides and who's picking. But generally, I used to work in customer service. I actually worked in Harvey at Sears Product Repair for years before I went back to school. And like those skills of customer service, talking people down when their dryer explodes, comes in handy if you have a more controversial topic or somebody having some feelings about something. It's real talk. That's based on a true story.
Yes. I think I have time for one more question before I open it up to the audience. So what does the future of radio look like?
I don't know. It better be one with me in it.
Yes.
I got into radio in an era where radio was dying. The next thing is HD radio, the next thing is satellite radio. Obviously, neither of those really panned out. I'm not saying that broadcast tuning the thing is going to be the thing, but what I will say is that people are listening. Gen Z is listening to things as much as any generation ever before. So if you can capture content that is listen based, there is a market for that, depending on what that is and how that enters the person's ear or is injected into their brain or whatever. Like I'm not the one to come up with that, but I do think that listening is not dead.
No. And I don't think radio is going anywhere in particular. I think radio, I think radio
hearing
will
it
be
for so
here.
long.
We've been hearing it. And I think there's a personal relationship people have with their favorite radio DJ. Like the person you like to listen to, I don't care who it is. It could be Breakfast Club, Angela Yee, I don't know who your favorite person is today. But you want to hear what they have to say. It's about just where you find them. Now, you're going to keep finding them on 91.5, or you're going to find them in your app somewhere streaming. I don't think the audio medium is going anywhere. Matter of fact, every data I read, listenership is up. Okay. So people want to hear, but they want to hear from specific people. I tell people all the time who want to start a podcast, your topic is great, but people are going to come back because of you. They're coming back because of the personalities. You mentioned Herb Kent, the cool gent. Okay, people came back to hear him. They could hear those songs anywhere. They had them in their house. It was not about the music necessarily. It was about the programming. It's about the personality. So if you've got that, you're going to be great at whatever you're looking to do. So I don't think radio's going anywhere. I think where you find it is going to be the change.
Exactly. It's the personality, and it's the future of radio needs to be accessible. I can't tell you how much I'm thrilled when I hear people say, "Oh, I moved out of Chicago years ago. I now live in so and so. I'm writing to you from Germany, and I still listen because they can." And to me, that's like, okay, that's a win, right? When I'm doing my live program from 11 to 1 on weekdays on 91.5 FM, and I put out the number for you to call now, which is 866-915-WBEZ. And people call and they're like, I'm in Dyer, Indiana, or I'm in so-and-so, and I used to, and I still listen. I love that stuff. And why? Because they can access it. They can go online. They can stream us. They can find me on their app. And so I think whatever the future of radio does is it needs to follow folks wherever they are. And I think you're doing the right thing with this new launch, Jaguar Radio. Ow.
Ow,
Hey.
yeah. All right. Any questions in the audience?
Now, don't be shy if you want to work in media. You can't
Right.
be shy. Or if you are shy, fake it till you make it.
Don't be shy. Anyone that saw me earlier today, I sang on these microphones. So you can't do that. But I do want to say, just so you all know, Radio Jaguar launched today. And I know it wasn't a lot, but it was our first time. We had 61 listeners or 61 individual, streams. So unique. That was our first day, our first hour. I think that's tremendous. So congratulations to Radio Jaguar for that.
61 people found you.
Yes.
And they chose to do that. They could have been doing anything else.
Yes.
a
And
busy day.
and it was both local and I know Florida, Dearborn, Michigan,
Awesome,
so
awesome.
we had people listening.
That's absolutely great.
Okay. So
Here we got a question.
great.
Hello, thank you for coming. I'm Lauren Dumas, was one of the student Jaguars earlier today. I have two questions, but of course, because we might be short on time, you can answer one. My first question was, what mindsets have you had to deprogram from escalating in your field or your industry that has now made you more successful? And another one is, how do you keep yourself centered when you're going up against like colleagues or people higher up when you're trying to fight for what you want to do or produce?
Gosh, those are great questions.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can tackle. What was the first one again? I feel like I'm-
What mindsets have you had to deprogram that has made you more successful?
Oh, this idea that I can't be anything I want to be. I used to think that I'd have to scale me back. With me, you're getting a Caribbean woman, you're getting a Canadian woman. I'm now living in the US. I don't fit in, or at least so it feels at first, right? I don't fit in. I talk a little bit differently. I may pronounce a few words differently. I put an OU in color and favorite. But I've learned as I've gotten older and as I've just matured within my career that like each job that I've had, each position I've held, like I'm there for a reason. They chose me. I was meant to be there. It was my time. And I deserve it. Every job that I've had, every position I'm in, right now I'm hosting the flagship talk show of the NPR station in the #3 market in the country because it's mine and no one else deserves it but me. And that's why I'm here. And it took me a while to get there. I had to unlearn we joke about the fake it till you make it, but I was like, okay, well, I made it. I don't have to feel like I'm faking it anymore. And so you'll get to that point where you can start to sit comfortably in what you're doing and build confidence within yourself. So yeah, I've had to unlearn this like sheepish, this feel like I should just stand behind others. I work in a very, white male dominated space in a lot of ways. And so just being a younger Black woman in the forefront, that's been hard too. I've had to like tell older white men what to do as a 30-something Black woman, as a now 40-year-old Black woman, and they're in their 60s. And so I've had to play that game too, but also again, remind myself like, okay, but you're in that position because you're supposed to be. So yeah.
And how do you say centered? How do you say centered
Oh,
when things are like with this Israel and Hamas thing?
Do you know what? I turn it all off when I leave. I hate to say it, but I unplug. It is imperative that you find, and you'll figure out your own schedule, your own body clock. You must silence all the noise at some point because you will literally go mad. So I stay centered by literally unplugging and like scheduling time to focus solely on my family, whether it's on cooking a meal and making it the best stew ever or whatever I'm making. But this watch is going off, that Slack is going off. I'm like, unless Navy Pier is burning down, which is where our students are located, don't call me. But that's how I remain centered and focused. And I'm able to come back fresh to the job and they get the best me. I come in, I'm like, morning. I'm like happy as ever because I was able to be like, bye y'all, don't text me. Don't call me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Malcolm Banks. This is my first semester here at Governor State, and I'm a member of Radio Jaguar. And I was just curious to know, what are media companies, whether they be big or small, what are they looking for in terms of a resume from a young and upcoming media person? Is it podcasts that's want to be seen on YouTube or Instagram? Is it making that TikTok and making it presentable to be able to send in?
Good question.
I'm gonna tell you, the number one thing is what I don't want to hear is people tell me I have a nice voice. I want to work at radio. Don't do that because there are no jobs like that exist anymore where you just walk in and say words. I mean, like the amount of prep work you have to do just to be a host. I am a producer. Like I've produced content. I've been behind. I'm on a PBS American Experience
Right
special
now.
this week. It's airing on Channel 11 and nationally. Like I'm able to do a lot of different things, and so I want to see that. I want to see, because the place that media is going is a multi-platform place. So if you're good on social, great. If you're good cutting tape, awesome, because you're gonna find jobs. If you can cut audio, you're gonna find jobs. If you're good at writing, even better, because that is, all of the platforms require a pretty good level of literacy.
And they're giving writing tests now for a lot of the jobs that you'll go for.
And I'm going to tell you a secret. Like all those people you hear on urban radio, no matter how like colloquial and like slang, they all went to school and they all speak very well or are capable of speaking very well. So maybe the broadcast position has you speaking like I'm speaking right now, or maybe not. Being able to be flexible in those different spaces is another thing folks are looking for, because you want to be able to get in where you fit in, right? Like how many times have you heard that? That is 100% true. Because when I started working at our NPR station, tell you the truth, as an intern, I had not heard of NPR before I went to college. I didn't know it existed. That wasn't my plan. That
Me
wasn't
neither.
that wasn't what I was looking for. But my background in English literature meant that I could sound educated when I needed to.
I just did an interview recently for a couple of podcasts. I'm always looking for a good reel. I want to hear your work. I mean, you can going to school is important.
Not
It
talking about
tells me.
Instagram reel, right?
No, no. I mean, that's good too.
I want to be clear.
Yeah,
In
Barry, thank you.
2023, you must be
Indeed,
clear.
you right. I'm talking about like an audio
Yes.
reel, like that shows you doing some reporting and you saying what you did as part of the story. Did you reach out to make the interviews? Did you book people? Like what roles did you play? I think oftentimes people don't understand all the roles you're playing to complete a project. Oftentimes you are the marketer, you are the booker, you putting the questions together, maybe you're writing the scripts, maybe you did the editing. Like list out your skills and what you're good at. That's what I'm always looking for, is practical experience.
Spend time on a demo. And when you're in school, make sure you're building your portfolio.
Mhm.
Thinking about that portfolio and having it online on a website that you can just put the link in your resume and people can access it. Every job I've ever gotten, I will send them a physical resume or send them an email or however they want, a PDF or whatever. But when I get into the space, always, it's formatted just like my website, because that's what they do. That's what they go to. They print it off. It's really easy. And with audio and video and multimedia, they can just access everything really easy. WordPress is free.
When I'm hiring, I always, in addition to all this stuff, I always gravitate towards people who are passionate about something specific. Like, don't be afraid to show like your interests too. Like we like that. Like when I think of some of the most recent producers I've hired, like one we hired from Houston about a year and a half ago, and she was like really into rock climbing, and I thought that was so cool. And just the way she could talk about rock climbing, and she had done stories on rock climbing. I was like, wow. But she's been such an asset on the team in other ways, in addition to like she had really good breaking news experience as well that I needed at the time. Like that was kind of a hole to fill. But she's also been able to add some really nice, cute, quirky C segments in the show, right? Our show's split in A, B, C, and C is usually the more featurey stuff. You better believe she's the one leading the feature stuff, because I knew of her, just her imagination and her sense and her passion for things outside of. It's like, what are you doing outside of the newsroom? We want to hear that too. Like, what makes you you?
Yes. Novia, do we have time for one more question? Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Keep hope alive.
Hello.
Keep hope alive. It's hard out here.
I can't.
My name is Levante. I'm president of music company here at GSU. My question is for the Cube. With the newness of Black queer spaces and acceptance, when you're networking, do you find that there's a lot of liaisons that have networks and connections that allow our voices to be heard in other spaces that aren't Black and queer?
Yes. So I think a great example, I did a lot of work with Affinity Community Services in the city. They've been serving Black lesbians for, I think they're in year 27, right? And so I volunteered there for many years and sat on the board, did that whole jam. There are so many organizations, so many places that want to support LGBTQ folks in the city of Chicago in particular, right? Right now, the country is a mess. There's no good way to say it, right? All the anti-LGBTQ legislation, anti-trans legislation, like all this stuff is happening in the world. And because of that, there's been an increase of people who are outwardly saying, we support who you are, because they want to be standing out in the crowd and saying, we are here for you. So everything, my in the crowd and saying, we are here for you. So everything, my success is based upon relationships. It's because someone saw that I was doing this work and they wanted to support it. So yeah, there's absolutely organizations, media places, individuals. There's also foundations that want to support this work and see it amplified in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead. One more question? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Hi. I want to know if you feel that if you don't have a background in journalism, do you feel like you can go into the broadcasting area?
Absolutely.
Because I have a multitude of things I do around here, and I can't pinpoint one, but I'm majoring in social work, but I'm also working with DLMD doing broadcasting. So I just wanted to know, did you, in a way, respect that way of going into it?
That's the traditional route, and that's the route I took. But I can say on a team of 10, there's probably 3 of us. You can absolutely do it. So many of us did something else and then maybe did a master's in journalism, did something else, did like television or did, excuse me, radio production, or, did something else like that was more focused on like audio, audio production, podcasting, etc. And the rest, you can learn that. We can teach you that, and you'll learn it a lot faster, especially on my show. I'll throw you right in there.
Thank you.
Well, it depends also. So like my major was English, my minor was broadcast communications. So it wasn't a journalism program at all. And I wound up same place she's at, and I'm actually running a station. So I could say that, yeah, you don't have to major in it, but that coursework is going to help you when you walk in the door, especially at a station, because it's going to be competitive. It's going to be full of people who walk in the door and understand how to use the software, understand how to use all those other things. And yes, you can learn, but you're only helping yourself if you walk in the door with that working knowledge. So not just I've worked at the student station, but I've taken this course and this course and this course. So if you can get a minor out of it before you walk out, do that.
And then intern, just keep interning. And similar to Sasha, I interned at a lot of places and a lot of stations in undergrad and realized what I liked and what I didn't.
Right.
There's this one story, we were in Des Moines. I remember it was like it was yesterday, and it was not, because it was like, I was the moment I realized I didn't want to do that. We had to drive to Amana, Iowa, where they like make Amana refrigerators, okay? And do a story because Iowa State just got a new football coach, okay? So we drove an hour and a half to set up a shot for a person to give us a 30-second sound bite, okay? And then drive an hour and a half back to cut that package for the 10 o'clock news that played for about 10 seconds. And I said to myself, this cannot be my life, okay?
But it's so real. That is
That is-
literally how it goes.
That is how it goes. Now,
Especially commercial TV and commercial radio. That's
yes,
how-
because I was interning in the sports department because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do play-by-play announcing, and I wanted to see if I could do that. And I was like, this right here is not what I can do.
what we're not gonna do.
So you have to, I say, go out here, get the experience, figure out what part of the process you actually like and what part of the process brings you a lot of joy. Because that did not bring me any joy. You see?
And it goes back to what Ayana said earlier. You're gonna end up making what you want out of it. Right? You're gonna create your own kind of hybrid position. That's what's gonna happen. Thank you.
All right.
We do have time for one more
Keeps
question.
being another one more.
Right.
I know.
This is the last
How
one.
many
more.
one
The last
words, though?
one. Okay.
I'm sorry. Don't mean to hold you up, but
Don't
I have a
apologize.
No problem.
question. I want to pick your brains because I want to try to understand. There are a lot of radio shows and podcasts about LGBT and the community and so on and so forth. Back in the 90s, I set up my own studio and I had the Jackie Oo Show, and I had all kinds of guests come in and talk about LGBT issues. I was also on CAN-TV for a few years. Now, what I don't understand, I suppose, is that all of the major channels, 2, 5, 7, 9, 32, et cetera, all have some sort of, and this is nothing against women, believe me, because I identify as one, but they have all kinds of The View and The Talk and things like that. Why won't television have more information available for the transgender community? Because I think that would give us a better stance or a better understanding. But you don't see it on TV.
Nope, you don't. And that's part of the reasons why I started the radio station, to be honest. It's part of the reason why I started the Cube. Because our stories aren't told, right? And then when they are, they're told, and then we move on. And I think there have to be examples of it actually working. And to date, I don't think that there's been great examples of it actually working. So Logo TV, right? Logo's a thing, but Logo ain't producing no content like it used to produce, right? They couldn't produce the revenue. There wasn't the investment in the work, right? There's a lot of independent stations. There's Reverie TV, who's streaming LGBTQ stories every single day. There's a lot of independent outlets like myself who have said, we will not wait on mainstream to try to catch up and tell our stories. We have to tell our stories ourselves. So I stopped waiting on 2, 5, 7, 9, 12, whoever else, because they're all owned by the same people. Okay, and those people are not interested or care about these stories, right? So my personal mission with the Cube and with our podcasting work is to show the humanity of LGBTQ folks and trans folks, because when we share each other's humanity, it becomes less about the political issue and more about how I am as a human being. And I think that that is our, at least I could say, this is my job as a journalist, as a content creator, is to show our humanity and to tell our stories. I think we absolutely cannot wait on the 1% to say that we're going to put us on television. We just have to do it ourselves. And the technology allows for us to do that today. So I would say try to tap into some of these independent outlets out here that are streaming every single day. STV Network is one, Reverie, Logo is one. And I'd also say tap into some independent creators who are making things every single day in these film festivals. So in Chicago, it's the Black Alphabet Film Festival. They've
That
been
just happened, right?
They did. 20 years of sharing LGBTQ movies and films, and specifically Black ones, actually Black Alphabet. So that's what I would say to that.
All right. All right. Is this it? Okay, yes. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely delightful. I want to thank everybody. Yes, let's give our panelists a round of applause. This has been so great. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. So they're going to be here for a few minutes. We'll stick around. Make sure you come and share your information, get their information. We want to thank you for coming today. It's been my absolute pleasure. And go GSU. We are,
Gov State.
we are,
Gov State.
we are,
Gov State.
we are.
Gov State.
All right, y'all got it. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Please stick around, everybody. If you have tickets, we're gonna pull the raffle tickets and we'll be doing some giveaways. So don't leave just
If you
yet.
did not get a ticket,